Hello. Welcome to today's session. My name is Belinda. Okay. Please note that to improve my connection, I had to switch off my webcam again. The network is quite congested since everyone is online now. Okay. So in order for you to be able to hear me, I have switched off my webcam. All right. Before we begin, if you're struggling to hear me, make sure audio is on, your speaker volume is turned up. Also take note automatically muted when so if you have questions, use the question box once again, then we can attend to those. Please download the presentation on the out section. To ask questions and leave comments. However, please do ask any irrelevant questions or make irrelevant comments on this webinar session. Strictly used to ask today. Okay, if we do question, please send an email to academic questions, and the question will be answered and made available afterwards. Tari. Raise your hand. If you can hear me, please can I ask that you guys please just type in the comment box if you can hear me. Guys, hello. Can you guys hear me? Please question box if you are able to hear me or not able to hear me. Hi. Hello. Hi. Hello, guys. Guys, can you please, if you can hear me? Okay, hi you guys. Sorry about that glitch. Let's try again. Please, can you guys raise your hands if you can hear me now? Okay. All right, so everyone can hear me now. Okay, thank you. Let's start. We have lost a bit of time. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds for you guys to just turn on your audio and make sure your speaker volume is turned up. Okay. And I take it everyone has downloaded their slides by now. So we're just gonna move on because we've lost a bit of time. Okay, so we continue with our revision. Today we're gonna be looking at plant tissue, which was done in term 1, and animal tissue done in term 2. Okay, so we'll be looking at this today, and we'll also be looking at a couple of questions that can be asked on this topic. All right. So last week we have learned about cells. So we went deeper into cells. We've done revision on cells, and we've learned that cells are the basic units of life, or the building blocks of life. We've also learned that cells divide by a process known as mitosis to form tissue. Okay, and then the cell division continues until organs are formed, and then systems are formed, and then an organism or a human being is formed. Okay, so cells divide by a process known as mitosis to form tissue. Okay, and by definition, tissue is a group of specialized cells that perform the same function. Okay, a group of specialized cells that perform the same function form tissue. Right, so we're going to be looking at the different types of tissues formed by cells in plants, and the different type of tissues formed by cells in humans. Okay, before I continue, because the network is quite bad, can you guys just give me a okay, can you guys hear me now? Please just type in the question box if you guys can hear me. Or if you can't hear me also, please just type in the question box if you can hear me before I continue. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, let's continue. So we will be looking at different types of tissue found in plants and different types of tissue found in animals. Okay, so plant tissue can be grouped into two sections. Okay, we have meristematic tissue, which divides throughout life. Okay, so this tissue divides by mitosis throughout your whole entire life. Okay, so we will not be looking into that, but you must just know that's the one type of tissue found in plants. And then the other type of tissue found in plants is known as permanent tissue. Okay, this is different from meristematic tissue because at some point it loses an ability to divide further. Okay, it specializes, it doesn't divide. At some point it stops dividing by mitosis. All right, this can further be classified into simple tissue and complex tissue. Okay, so you've looked at the complex tissue a little when you were doing a transpiration. Okay, in the beginning when you were busy with transpiration, you looked at that briefly. Okay, we've looked at this briefly when we were doing transpiration in the beginning of the webinar sessions. Okay, and then under simple tissue we have 3 types. Okay, we have parenchyma, we have a collenchyma, and we have a sclerenchyma under simple tissue. Okay, so these are the type of tissues that you find under permanent tissue. All this tissue loses an ability to divide further at some point, but meristematic tissue divides throughout life. Okay, because we have connection issues, I'm just gonna keep on checking with you guys if you can hear me so that I don't lose you. Please, can you raise your hands if you can still hear me? Can you please raise your hands if you can still hear me? Thank you. I'm just gonna keep on doing this often so that I make sure that I didn't lose you at any point and continue speaking alone. Okay, so plant tissue can be divided into 2 parts. The one is known as meristematic tissue, and the other permanent tissue, which can further be divided into 2 sections, the one simple tissue and the other complex tissue. And the complex tissue, we find the xylem and the phloem. This is also known as the vascular system or the transport system in plants. And under simple tissue, we have the parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. All right. Okay. Let's carry on. Okay. So as we've seen in the previous slide, meristematic tissue divides throughout life. Okay, and the function of meristematic tissue is to make new cells for growth and repair. So this is the tissue that's responsible for our growth and repairing damaged cells. Okay, for instance, if you get a cut somewhere in your body, your cells will start to divide to replace that tissue. Okay, so meristematic tissue is responsible for making new cells for growth and repair, and then while some of this differentiate and become permanent for a specific function. Right, so in grade 10 you won't be looking that much into meristematic tissue, but you will be looking into detail the permanent tissue. Okay, functions of the permanent tissue are as follows. We have dermal tissue that covers and protects the plant. We have ground tissue, we've looked at that. It fills spaces between tissue. And then we have vascular tissue that transports water and nutrients throughout the plants. Okay, so those are, in a nutshell, the functions of permanent tissue. Right? Okay, so this is a structure of a leaf in plants. And basically, this is just for you guys to get an overview of where you would find the tissue that we're talking about. All right, so this is the cuticle that covers the leaf to prevent too much water loss. Okay, and just below the cuticle, you'll find your upper epidermis, which is one of the tissue that we're going to be looking at. You'll find the upper epidermis. From there, just underneath that, you will find the ground tissue that will fill the spaces in between tissues, right? And then inside, you will find your vascular tissue, your xylem, responsible for transporting water from the roots of the plant to the aerial parts of the plant. Okay, one being the leaf itself. Okay, and then here you'll find a phloem. Again, that's another type of vascular tissue. This is responsible for transporting food from the leaf to other parts of the plant where it's needed. Okay, again, you'll find the lower epidermis and the cuticle, right? Okay, so this is a structure of a leaf, but remember you do find a tissue anywhere on the plant. Okay, so it's not found only on the leaves, but anywhere on the plant. Okay, so let's look at the tissue in more detail. Okay, so we have 3 types of feminine tissue. It is the epidermal tissue, the ground tissue, and the vascular tissue. Okay, so the epidermal tissue, also known as the skin of the cells, is for protection. Okay, and then the wax cuticle, also found on the epidermal tissue, is there to prevent water loss from the plant. Okay, the structure of the epidermal tissue is usually just a single layer of cells. Okay, the epidermal tissue contains a single layer of cells, and it is for protection. And the waxy cuticle found in the epidermis also is playing a huge role in preventing water loss. Okay, then we have ground tissue, and under ground tissue we have 3 types of tissue. We have the parenchyma, the collenchyma, and the sclerenchyma. Okay, so the structure of the parenchyma is that it's got a thin wall. It's got a thin wall, and it is loosely packed. And its function is, or one of its function is to store food and water. Okay, the collenchyma is different from the parenchyma because it is thick-walled and it's tightly packed. The parenchyma is thin-walled and loosely packed. The collenchyma is thick-walled and tightly packed together. And its function is to provide flexible support and to provide structure. Okay, the function of the collenchyma is to provide flexible support and to provide structure. Okay, the sclerenchyma cell walls are also thickened. They're thickened with lignin, which makes it very strong, stronger than the other tissue or the other ground tissue. The cell walls are thickened with lignin, and they provide support. The sclerenchyma's function is to provide support within the plant. Okay, then we have vascular tissue, and under vascular tissue we've got the xylem, which transports water and minerals, and then we've got the phloem, which transports food. Okay, food that was photosynthesized in the leaves is transported through the phloem to other parts of the plants where it is needed. All right, remember guys to send through your questions, even if we do not get time to answer them now, but please send them through. Okay, we will respond to them via email. Okay, if you've got any questions, please remember to send them on the question box. All right. Okay, now let's look at this. Basically summarizes the different types of permanent tissue found in plants. Okay, this is our xylem and phloem, our vascular tissue responsible for transportation of food and water. Okay, and this image depicts the differences or the structural differences between our xylem and our phloem, which you can get also as an exam question. Okay, so first difference is the units or the components or the compounds or substances that this tissue transports. Xylem transports water and minerals, whereas phloem transports organic molecules, or simply put, food. Okay, there is no end walls between cells in the xylem. There is no end walls between cells, but there is end walls between cells in a phloem. Okay, xylem's transportation is only one way. It's a one-way ticket from the roots to the leaves, and then in the leaves, that's where transpiration will occur. But transportation in or movement in the phloem is two ways. Okay, it goes up and down. Okay, whereas in the xylem it is an upward movement only. Okay, the outer cells of a xylem are not living, but the cells in a phloem are living. Okay, the outer cells in the xylem are non-living, whereas the cells in the phloem are living. Right, so these are typical questions that you can get from plant tissue. Okay, let's look at it. Question 3.3, this was found in a past paper, a past June examination paper. The diagrams below represents plant tissues. So we've got 3 diagrams representing plant tissue. If you guys, you must please go to your books, your My Impact books. You will find structures of this tissue, all of this tissue. There's nice structures in your My Impact book. Please go and look at them after this webinar or whenever you get a chance. Okay, I didn't include the structures of the cells in the presentation, but please go and find them in your books. There's a nice structures for each and every tissue in your impact book. Okay, so we have diagram 1 representing a type of tissue, we have diagram 2 representing a type of tissue, and we have diagram 3 representing a type of tissue. Okay, question 3.3.1 asked to identify the tissue in diagram 1, and B asked to identify the tissue found in diagram 2. Okay, so we can see that the cells in this tissue are loosely packed. We can see that they are loosely packed. There are intercellular spaces in between the cells. Okay, and because of that, we have seen in the previous slide the differences. Parenchyma cells are loosely packed. Collenchyma, thick-walled but tightly packed. So clearly this cannot be a collenchyma because there is intercellular spaces in between the cells. Okay, so this diagram 1 represents parenchyma. Okay, diagram 3, the cells are tightly packed together with small, very little intercellular spaces in between them. They're tightly packed together. So this means diagram 3 represents a collenchyma tissue. All right. So when you're given a diagram and you're asked to identify what structure it represents, you look at the characteristics that you have learned of that particular tissue or whatever structure that you are asked. You look at the characteristics and see if it fits the specific tissue that will help you identify the diagrams. Okay. Question 3.3.2. Let's just look at the time. Explain one consequence if sorry about that. Explain one consequence if the holes of the sieve plates in the tissue in diagram 2 become blocked. What will the consequence be if the whole of this if the holes in the sieve plates in tissue in diagram 2 becomes blocked? What would a blockage in the holes do to the tissue? Okay, there's a couple, but they just wanted one here, but I'm just going to mention two. No movement of food from one cell to the other. There will be no movement of food from one cell to another if there is a blockage in the sieve plates. Okay, food will not be able to move from one cell to another. And then there will be no food from leaves to other parts of the plant. So the leaves will photosynthesize and the food will just stay there and will not be able to be transported to other parts of the plant. Okay. Explain two structural adaptations of the cells in tissue in diagram 1. Explain two structural adaptations of the cells in the tissue in diagram 1, which is the parenchyma. Okay, what makes the cells in this tissue structurally suited to perform its functions? Okay, so first of all, the cells in parenchyma have thin cell walls. They have thin cell walls, and this allows for movement of water and mineral salts. Okay, so the fact that the cells have thin cell walls allows for movement of water and mineral salts. Okay, again, it has large vacuoles. The cells in the parenchyma have large cell vacuoles. You remember when we did the structure of a cell last week, we saw that inside a plant cell, we've got a large vacuole. Okay, this allows for storage of water. The large vacuole found in parenchyma tissue cells have a large vacuole that allows for storage of water. Okay, again, it's got large intercellular spaces that you can see there. There's large spaces that you can see on the tissue, visible on the tissue. These large intercellular spaces allow for gaseous exchange. Okay, so this makes parenchyma well suited to perform its functions. Let me write it down for you guys. And you can take a screenshot. Two structural adaptations. Okay, thin cell walls. It's got thin cell walls that allow for transportation. That's thin over there. That allow for transportation of water and minerals. Transportation of water and minerals. This the thin cell walls found in parenchymal tissue allows for transportation of water. Again, that's number one. Number two, the large intercellular spaces. The large intercellular spaces found in the cell allow for gaseous exchange. The intercellular spaces allow for gaseous exchange. For gaseous exchange. I hope you guys can see. Okay, they just wanted 2, so I'm going to leave it at that. Remember, guys, if they ask for 2 answers and you give 3, they will mark the first 2. Okay, so just make sure that although it wastes your time, there's no problem with you giving a lot of answers, but they will mark the first 2. So if you want to give 3 just in case you want to be safe, make sure that the first 2 that you indicate in your paper are the ones that you are sure of, because they will mark the first 2 and they're not gonna even look at the last one. All right, so when you give answers, please take note of that. Okay, explain one structural adaptation of the cells in tissue in the tissue in diagram 3. A structural adaptation in Parenchyma tissue. Right, remember this one has thick cell walls. It's got thick cell walls and it's got no intercellular spaces in between. The Parenchyma has thick cell walls and it's got it's tightly packed, no intercellular spaces in between. Okay, the thick cell wall found in this tissue, the thick cell wall found in this tissue allows for proper support. Allow for support. Okay, so it's got thick cell walls that allow for proper support. Right? Let me check. Can you guys still hear me? Please raise your hands if you can hear me. Okay. Remember to please send through questions if there's something that you didn't understand. Please do send questions as we go. I apologize if I'm being too fast. We are just pressed for time with the time that was lost in the beginning to finish. Okay, and then we have animal tissue. Okay, so there is 4 different types of tissue found in animals. We have the epithelial tissue, we have connective tissue, we have muscular tissue, and we have nervous tissue. Okay, epithelial tissue can further be divided into 5 types. We have a squamous epithelial tissue, we have a cuboidal epithelial tissue, we have a columnar epithelial tissue, we have ciliated epithelial tissue, and we have glandular epithelial tissue. Okay, connective tissue can also be divided into 4 parts, which can further be divided into other parts as well. We have areola, and under areola we have tendon and ligaments. We have adipose connective tissue. We have skeletal connective tissue that we looked at in more detail in one of the webinars. And under skeletal we have bone and we have cartilage. We have fluid, which we also looked at in one of the webinar sessions when we were doing the circulatory system. Under fluid connective tissue, we have blood and lymph. Okay, we have muscular tissue, which we're gonna briefly look at now, and we have nervous tissue. Right? So let's look into the epithelial tissue. Okay, so the types of epithelial tissue are named according to the shape and the type of cells that they have. They are named according to the shape and the type of cells that they have. For example, if you look at this, the cells are in column shapes. They're in column shapes, hence why they call them the columnar epithelium tissue or columnar epithelium. They are in columns. Okay, these ones are flat. Okay, they are flat tissue. Okay, this is why they are known as squamous epithelium, right? And then we have cuboidal. As you can see, although they are not proper cubes, but they are shaped like cubes. They're shaped like cubes. All right, okay, let's look into them. So we have simple squamous epithelium tissue, which is mostly found in the air sacs of the lung. So you'll find this type of tissue mostly in the air sacs in the lungs. Okay, and then we have simple cuboidal epithelium, which is found in the kidneys. This is the tissue that is found in the kidneys. We have columnar epithelium, which is found in the intestines. Okay, and then we have ciliated columnar epithelium. Okay, so this epithelium has hair-like structures called cilia. Okay, that's why it's named ciliated columnar epithelium. It's different from this one because it's got hair-like structures called cilia, hence why they call it ciliated columnar epithelium. It is found in the respiratory tract. You find this tissue mostly in the respiratory tract. Okay, and the cilia helps in that it traps any dust particles or any foreign particles that might enter your respiratory tract. Okay, and then we have the squamous or stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, it's different from this because this one has a single layer of cells. It's got a single layer of cells. This one has multiple layers of cells, of squamous cells. Right? This type of tissue is found in the esophagus. Okay, this is the pipe where food travels after it has been ingested and mechanically digested in your mouth. It travels through the esophagus. Okay, so this is a brief summary of the types of epithelial tissue found in animals. Okay, the epithelial tissue covers the body. It covers the body. It lines all cavities and glands. Okay, epithelial tissue form a boundary between the external environment and our internal organs, and all substances must pass through the epithelium. Okay, epithelial tissue are identified by their shape, the type of cells, and the number of layers. Okay, so if there is only one layer, it is known as simple. If there is only one layer of cells, it's known as simple. Okay, if there's a lot, it's known as stratified. Right? Can you guys still hear me? Can you please raise your hands if you can hear me? Sorry, please raise your hands if you can still hear me. Thank you. Okay, please remember to leave questions. Connective tissue, as the name explains, it is for binding and supporting. It is for transporting substances. It's a connect. It transports substances within the body. Again, it insulates, it protects, and it stores some reserve fuel. Okay. This is the type of connective tissue that you get in animals. You've got a loose connective tissue, which is found under the skin. Okay, this is a typical structure of a loose connective tissue. And then you have adipose tissue. You have blood. You have fibrous connective tissue. This is a typical structure of a fibrous connective tissue. You have a cartilage, and you have bone. Okay, those are the different types of connective tissue that you find in animals. Okay, we've looked at the general functions already. Muscular tissue can be divided into 3 types. We have cardiac muscles. This is a typical structure of a cardiac muscle. As the name suggests, it's found in the hearts. Okay, the muscles of the heart. We have the skeletal muscle, and this is a typical structure of a skeletal muscle. And we have smooth muscle that is found mostly in the digestive tract. The smooth muscle is found in the digestive tract. Okay. Muscle tissue consists of bundles of fibers with contractibility. So this means they're able to contract and relax. So their main characteristics is that they are contractible. They've got contractibility. Okay. There are 2 types or 2 groups of muscle tissue. We have voluntary and involuntary muscle tissue. Voluntary, as the name says it, are controlled by a conscious decision. Okay, they are controlled by a conscious decision that the animal makes. Okay, under the microscope, voluntary muscle has a cross-striated appearance, hence the name cross-striated muscle tissue. This tissue is responsible for movement and maintaining posture. Involuntary muscle tissue functions automatically. It cannot be controlled by a conscious decision. Okay, and the tissue is also known as smooth muscle tissue. It is responsible for moving food down the alimentary canal. As we have seen, this is found in the digestive tract. This is found in the alimentary canal. Okay. Cardiac muscle tissue. These are involuntary muscle tissue that help with contractions of the heart. Okay, hence why you only find cardiac muscles in the heart. Their main function or their only function is to help with contractions of the heart. Okay, lastly, we've got the nerve tissue. Okay, this structure is very important for examination processes. This is a structure of a neuron. Okay, so nerve cells or neurons are specialized for communication. Okay, so in order for you to be able to hear something and process it, it's thanks to this baby, it's thanks to this tissue. It is responsible for communication. Okay, the brain and the spinal cord, for example, are composed of a network of neurons. Okay, and this is all responsible for communication from the external environment to the internal environment. Okay, this is a typical structure of a neuron responsible for the transportation of this information that is collected from the external environment, be it hearing something, be it tasting something or feeling something. These neurons are responsible for transporting that impulses or messages that was collected by your sensory organs from the external environment to your brain or for further processing. Okay, this is a typical structure of a neuron, and it consists of the cell body axon, and terminals. Okay, in the cell body, you will find a nucleus and dendrites. Okay, these are typical questions that can be asked on animal tissue. We still have 3 minutes. Let's quickly look at it. Um, 2.1 are the statements in column 1 applicable to only A, only B, or both A and B, or none in column 2. Only write the correct option next to the question number. E.g., for 2.2.1, you will look at the description and see if it applies to A only, B only, or both A and B. So let's say 2.1.1 applies to A only. In your answer, you are required to just write the question number 2.1.1, and if it applies to B only, write B. If it applies to A only, write A next to your question number, or if it applies to both, you write both. Let's look at the description and see if it applies to both A and B, or A only or B only. Let's look at that quickly. Tissue that lines the internal walls of cavities. Tissue that lines the internal walls of cavities, e.g., blood vessels, heart, alveoli. Okay, is it A, the squamous epithelium, or B, columnar epithelium, or both A and B? Okay, the correct answer is A, squamous epithelium. Okay, it makes sense for squamous epithelium to line blood vessels because remember there's transportation that's taking place here. So this squamous epithelium consists of a single layer that makes it easy for substances to go into and out of the blood vessels. Okay, so this tissue that lines the internal walls of cavities is A. So the correct answer for 2.1.1 is A. 2.1.2, tissue that lines the alimentary canal, e.g., the stomach and the small intestines. Okay, is it A, cuboidal epithelium, or B, columnar epithelium, or both of them? And the correct answer is B, the columnar epithelium. If you can go back to the slides, you will see that. Epithelium tissue. The simple or the columnar epithelium lines the intestines. Intestines are found in the alimentary canal. Okay, so the correct answer for that is B. Okay, this contains the iron-containing protein hemoglobin. Is it A, blood plasma, B, leukocytes, both A and B, or none? Oh, there is none there. There is an option for none. Okay, the correct answer there is none. The red blood cells contain the protein hemoglobin, not the blood plasma and not the leukocytes. Red blood cells. Okay, so none. 2.1.4, tissue only occurring in walls of the heart. Is it A, cardiac muscles, or B, striated muscle tissue? Can you attempt that one? Tissue only occurring in walls of the heart. Is it A, cardiac muscles, or B, striated muscle tissue? Can you guys attempt that one quickly in the question box? It's a simple one. Tissue only occurring in walls of the heart? Is it A, cardiac muscle tissue, B, striated muscle tissue, or is it both A and B, or is it none? The correct answer is A, cardiac muscle tissue. 2.1.5, conduct nerve impulses from the central nervous system to the effectors. Is it a sensory neuron or a motor neuron? Okay, remember, a sensory neuron collects the information, it senses the information. Okay, motor neuron is responsible for conducting the impulses or the messages from the central nervous system to the effectors so that they can properly respond. You will look into the nervous system in more detail when you're doing grade 12. Okay, so you'll understand it better when you when you do it in more detail when you're in grade 12. Okay. For now, this is just a brief introduction into the tissue, but you'll be looking into the nervous system in grade 12. Okay, so we're gonna call it a day. Please attempt the questions in this presentation. Okay, go and study this in more detail in a textbook, or you can use the slides, and please try and answer this the rest of the questions. Okay, if you've got questions that you couldn't send through now, please, you can send an email at academics@impact.co.za, and I will give you feedback. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day further, and enjoy your break next week as well. I'll see you again next time. Bye.